They abandoned her at an empty military base. One woman, no backup, no extraction. Just a radio and the promise of dawn. When 92 militants attacked, believing the compound was deserted, they had no idea who she really was. What command tried to bury. What happened in those 8 hours would be classified. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate untold stories, consider subscribing, because some battles are won in silence. The convoy kicked up dust at sunset, 3 transport trucks rumbling toward the gate of Forward Operating Base Granite Ridge. Soldiers threw duffel bags into the beds with the casual relief of men leaving a graveyard shift. 4 months of border patrol rotation, finally over. The base was scheduled for shutdown. Most personnel had evacuated 2 days prior. Only a skeleton crew remained for final breakdown. Reeve Calloway sat on an empty ammunition crate near the supply depot, a clipboard balanced on her knee. She was tallying equipment serial numbers in the fading light. Her uniform was faded from too many washes, her hair pulled back in a regulation bun, threaded with early gray. 33 years old and invisible. Captain Orrin Dench walked past without looking at her. He was loading his personal gear, barking orders to subordinates. His uniform was crisp despite the heat. He had that particular stride of officers who believed their presence alone maintained order. A junior officer named Price jogged by carrying a rifle case. He glanced at Reeve and grinned at his buddy. Calloway is still here. Thought she was part of the furniture. His friend laughed. Someone has to count the paper clips. Reeve did not look up. Her pen moved across the checklist with mechanical precision. She had learned years ago that reactions only invited more attention. Silence was armor. Dench approached the convoy and turned back toward the compound. His eyes swept across the nearly empty base and landed on Reeve for the first time that day. Calloway, dawn extraction, 0600. Try not to lose anything valuable before then. She nodded once without meeting his gaze. Understood, sir. He climbed into the lead truck without another word. The convoy engines roared to life. Dust swirled through the compound as the vehicles rolled through the gate and disappeared down the valley road. The sound faded into the distance. Then there was only wind and the low hum of the single generator keeping minimal power running. Reeve remained on the crate for a full minute after they left. Her pen had stopped moving. She stared at the empty gate, at the settling dust, at the mountains turning purple in the twilight. Then she stood and walked back into the supply depot. Inside, she moved with sudden purpose. She checked the generator fuel levels. Full tank. Backup canister topped off. She tested the overhead lights. Functional. She walked the perimeter fence, running her hand along the chain link, testing tension. Points where the metal gave slightly under pressure. Most soldiers would never notice these details. Most soldiers were not preparing for something. Her quarters were in a prefab unit near the command center. Spartan. A cot, a footlocker, a small desk with a lamp. She opened the footlocker and sorted through folded clothes until she found a worn photograph tucked beneath a stack of civilian shirts. 3 people in tactical gear, arms around each other, faces young and sun-worn. Her own face was barely recognizable. Beside her stood 2 others. One had initials carved into the photo border, JT. The other, Kel. Both faces marked with small X symbols drawn in permanent marker. She looked at the photo for 5 seconds. Then she placed it face down in the locker and closed the lid. Night fell fast in the mountains. Reeve pulled on a tactical vest over her uniform and loaded it with essentials. Flashlight, multi-tool, first aid kit, sidearm with 2 spare magazines. She slung a rifle over her shoulder and walked the compound perimeter, checking camera feeds on a handheld monitor. 6 cameras total, 3 covering the main gate, 2 on the eastern and western approaches, 1 on the rear service road, all functional. She climbed the observation tower, a 2-story metal structure overlooking the main approach. From here she could see 5 kilometers down the valley. Empty road, dark ridgelines, stars beginning to emerge in the clear sky. She checked her watch, 1947, 10 hours and 13 minutes until extraction. Back on the ground, she entered the communications bunker. The radio equipment hummed with standby power. She tested frequencies, command channel, emergency channel, weather broadcast, static on most. The weather report crackled through with broken phrases. Heavy electrical activity expected. Communications may be interrupted. High winds overnight. She switched to the command frequency and keyed the mic. Base Granite to command, radio check, over, static. She tried twice more, no response. The storm was already interfering with signals. Satellite uplink showed intermittent connection. Not unusual for this region, but it meant she was functionally alone until dawn. Reeve returned to the armory and inventoried weapons. 2 M4 rifles, 1 light machine gun, 4 grenades, 6 claymore mines, ammunition crates stacked along the wall. Enough for a small firefight. Enough for more than inventory duty required. One of the rifles had scratches carved into the wooden stock, crude letters, JT. She ran her thumb across them. The wood was worn smooth from handling. She set that rifle aside and selected a different one, checked the action, loaded a magazine, set it within reach. In the command center, she unfolded a tactical map of the base. Someone had drawn defensive positions in pencil, fire lanes, choke points, overlapping fields of fire. The handwriting was neat and methodical. Her handwriting? She had drawn these weeks ago, during a sleepless night. Rehearsal, muscle memory, preparation for scenarios that were statistically unlikely. She ate an MRE without tasting it. Chicken and rice, consumed for fuel, not pleasure. Then she opened a notebook filled with her own cramped writing, pages of notes, guard rotation schedules from when the base was fully staffed, approach vectors, response times, weaknesses in perimeter security. She had documented everything with the obsessive detail of someone who knew that details saved lives. On the last page, written in red ink, Coast Valley, 96, Helmand Province, 83, FOB Granite Ridge. The last entry was blank, waiting to be filled. She closed the notebook and checked her watch. 21:15, 8 hours and 45 minutes. The motion sensor alarm beeped. Sector 7, outer perimeter. She checked the camera feed on the monitor. Empty. Just windblown debris tumbling across the dirt. She reset the alarm and returned to her notes. 3 minutes later, the alarm beeped again. Sector 4. Different location. She checked the feed. Nothing visible in the darkness. Thermal imaging showed ambient heat signatures, rocks cooling from the day's sun. No movement. Reeve stood and walked to the window. The compound was silent. Floodlights illuminated the inner perimeter in harsh white pools. Beyond that, darkness. She listened. Wind. The hum of the generator. Nothing else. She armed herself. Sidearm on her hip. Rifle in hand. Spare magazines in her vest. She moved to the observation tower and climbed quickly, boots ringing on metal stairs. At the top, she crouched low and scanned the perimeter with night vision optics. The valley was awash of green light and shadow. She swept left to right, studying the tree line 400 meters distant. For 30 seconds, she saw nothing. Then, movement. A figure broke from cover and moved laterally along the ridge. Then another. Tactical spacing, deliberate movement, not random. She counted 8 figures, 12, 18. More emerging from the valley beyond, moving in coordinated groups. They were approaching the base from multiple angles. Reeve keyed her radio without taking her eyes from the scope. Base Granite to command, over, static. Any unit, this is Granite Ridge. We have hostile contact, over, more static. She tried the emergency frequency. Nothing. The storm had severed communications completely. She descended the tower and returned to the armory, moved quickly now, loaded magazines, filled a tactical vest with ammunition, dragged 2 ammo cans to firing positions she had pre-identified, set claymore mines at choke points near the main gate, placed trip flares along blind approaches. Every action was practiced, efficient. She had rehearsed this exact scenario alone in the dark. She checked her watch. 21:42, 7 hours and 18 minutes. Through the camera feeds, she watched them close in. 90-plus fighters, she estimated, equipped with rifles and RPGs, moving like trained infantry. They believed the base was abandoned, intelligence failure on their part, or perfect timing on theirs. She shut down all exterior lights, rerouted power to cameras and thermal optics. The compound plunged into darkness. She moved through the shadows like she had done this before. Because she had. The first attacker reached the outer fence. She watched him on thermal imaging, a bright white figure against cool background. He signaled others forward. They began cutting through the chain link. Reeve positioned herself at a firing point overlooking the main gate. Prone, rifle supported on sandbags, sight picture clear. She slowed her breathing, counted heartbeats, waited. They breached the fence, poured through the gap. 20 fighters moving toward the main compound buildings. They thought they were walking into an empty base. Easy salvage, weapons and supplies left behind. She activated the floodlights. Blinding white light flooded the kill zone. The attackers froze, momentarily disoriented. She detonated the claymore. The explosion tore through the lead group. Bodies fell. Survivors scattered, returning blind fire toward the light source. Reeve fired controlled bursts. Center mass, leading targets, dropping fighters with mechanical precision. No wasted ammunition, no hesitation. 5 seconds of contact. 7 attackers down. The rest retreated beyond the fence line. She relocated immediately, moved to a different position, waited, watched. Through the thermal scope, she saw them regrouping. Their leader emerged, taller than the others. Scarred face visible in starlight. He was shouting orders, gesturing toward the compound. Disbelief in his body language. They had expected no resistance. Now they knew someone was defending. The enemy leader, Zahir, pulled binoculars and scanned the compound. His gaze swept across buildings, towers, firing positions. Then he saw her. One figure, alone in the tower. He lowered the binoculars slowly. Even from this distance, she could see his expression shift. Confusion. Then something like rage. He raised a radio and spoke. Within minutes, headlights appeared on the valley road. Trucks, dozens of them. More fighters pouring out. Reinforcements. She counted through the scope. 40, 60, 80, over 90 total. Reeve checked her watch. 22:07. 7 hours and 53 minutes. She descended the tower and moved to the command bunker. Used the PA system. Played recorded radio chatter from old patrol logs, voices calling out sectors, fake troop movements, 2nd platoon, report status. Roger, position secure, creating the illusion of multiple defenders. The enemy probed again. This time they hit 3 points simultaneously. Testing her response time, she fired from the north tower, relocated to the east bunker, fired again, made them think there were multiple shooters. The attack stalled. 23:12. 6 hours and 40. 8 minutes. They launched mortars, indirect fire walking across the compound. She took cover in reinforced positions. Shrapnel pinged off metal walls. Explosions cratered the ground. When the barrage lifted, she moved again. Always moving, never static. She used the machine gun for the third wave. Long bursts that forced them to ground. Suppressive fire. Not about kills, about controlling movement, denying them initiative. When they retreated again, she counted bodies through the thermal scope. 14 more down. 23:58, 6 hours and 2 minutes. The enemy commander was learning. He split his forces. Simultaneous pressure on multiple gates. She could not cover everything. The eastern fence was breached. She abandoned the tower and fell back to inner perimeter. Set fuel barrels as obstacles. Rigged them with grenades. 0030, 5 hours and 30 minutes. She took shrapnel in her left arm during the fourth wave, hot metal tearing through sleeve and flesh. She field dressed it in the 30 seconds, wrapped gauze tight. Ignored the pain. Pain was information. Blood loss was tactical data. She adjusted her movements accordingly. They were inside the wire now. Close quarters. She fought room to room with rifle and sidearm, used doorways as fatal funnels. Forced them into narrow approaches where numbers meant nothing. Training took over, muscle memory from years of close quarters combat drills. Move, shoot, move, never stay exposed. One fighter got within 3 meters. She transitioned to sidearm. 2 shots, center mass. He dropped. She kept moving. 01:43, 4 hours and 17 minutes. She was back in the command bunker when the radio crackled. Actual signal breaking through the storm interference. Her hand shot to the handset. Granite Ridge, this is Falcon 6, acknowledge. Her heart rate spiked, first time in hours. Falcon 6, this is Granite. I have 90 plus hostiles. Need immediate extraction. Static. Then, broken phrases. Extraction delayed. Weather conditions. Cannot reach you until 0900 hours. She stared at the radio. Extraction pushed back 3 hours. 7 hours total remaining. Say again, Falcon 6. I am under direct assault. Delayed to 0900. Good luck, Granite. The radio went dead. No further transmissions. She lowered the handset slowly. Her hand was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. Blood loss. The reality of 7 more hours. She checked her ammunition. 3 magazines left for the rifle, 4 for the sidearm, 2 grenades, 1 claymore. She looked at her wounds, arm wrapped in blood-soaked gauze, leg torn from shrapnel, shallow cuts across her face from flying debris. Outside, the enemy was regrouping for another assault. She could hear Zahir shouting orders, rallying his forces. They would come again. They had numbers. They had time. They believed attrition would win. Rave slumped against the bunker wall, let her head fall back, closed her eyes for 5 seconds, then opened them, looked at her watch. 0217. 6 hours and 43 minutes, she whispered to herself. Coast was 96. You have done this before. The reference meant nothing to anyone listening, but to her, it was everything. A reminder of another night, another impossible defense, another time when command had written her off and she had survived anyway. Explosion outside. The enemy was coming again. 5th wave or 6th. She had lost count. She picked up her rifle, chambered a round, stood despite the leg wound, moved to position. They would keep coming until dawn. She would keep fighting until dawn. Simple mathematics, simple endurance. The only question was whether 7 hours was enough time for both. Have you ever watched someone get left behind and still do the right thing? Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones holding everything together. If stories like this matter to you, I would appreciate your support through a subscription. Part 2 will show you what she was really capable of. 0231. Reeve repositioned to the north firing point. The enemy was adapting. They no longer bunched up. They used cover. They suppressed her positions before advancing. Zahir was learning from his losses. She fired 3-round bursts, dropped 2 fighters crossing open ground. Relocated before return fire arrived. The pattern had become mechanical. Identify target. Engage. Move. Survive. Her arm throbbed where shrapnel had torn through. The gauze was soaked through. She needed to change it, but there was no time. Every second spent on wounds was a second they gained ground. She tightened the wrap with her teeth and kept moving. The machine gun was set up in the eastern bunker. She had pre-positioned it hours ago. Now she used it to deny them the entire eastern approach. Long, sustained bursts, tracers cutting through darkness. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Spent brass clattered across. Concrete. The barrel glowed orange. When the gun ran dry, she left it. No time to reload. She grabbed the rifle and moved to the next position. Always moving. Static defenders died first. 0308. 5 hours and 52 minutes. They hit the southern gate with an RPG. The explosion blew the gate off its hinges. Metal twisted and fell. Smoke poured through the gap. She heard shouting. Boots on gravel. They were pushing hard now. Committing forces. Betting she was worn down. She triggered a trip flare. White phosphorus erupted in the breach. Fighters scattered, temporarily blinded. She picked off 3 in the confusion. The rest fell back, dragging wounded. Reeve moved through the compound in a crouch. Her leg was stiffening. The wound was worse than she had initially assessed. Muscle damage, limited mobility. She compensated by choosing positions that required less movement between them. In the supply depot, she found the old memorial plaque mounted on the wall. She had walked past it 100 times, never stopped to read it. Now she paused. The brass was tarnished. Operation Granite Shield, 2019. Below it, a list of names, soldiers who had fallen during that operation. Most were legible. One name had been redacted, thick black marker obscuring the letters. She ran her finger across it. The ink was old but deliberate. Someone had wanted that name erased. Explosions outside pulled her back. No time for ghosts. 3:42, 5 hours and 18 minutes. The sixth wave came from two directions simultaneously, north and west. She could not cover both. She chose the north because it led directly to the command bunker. Let them have the west. She would deny them anything critical. She fired until the magazine ran dry, reloaded, fired again. Her movements were slower now, blood loss accumulating, dehydration setting in. She had not drunk water in over an hour. Her mouth was dry, lips cracked. She forced herself to drink from a canteen. Hydration was tactical necessity. They breached the western perimeter. She heard them inside the compound now. Close. Too close. She fell back to the inner ring, the command bunker and armory, her final defensive positions. 4:15. 4 hours and 45 minutes. She was in the armory reloading magazines when she found the radio log, an old handheld unit left on a shelf. Its battery was dead, but the last recorded transmission was still saved in memory. She had not touched this radio in 4 years, had not wanted to. Now she pressed playback, static, then voices, command frequency, a man's voice, stressed. Calloway, you are ordered to fall back, acknowledge. Then her own voice, younger, steadier, negative. Civilians still inside compound. I am holding position, the command voice again, sharper. That is an order, Captain Calloway. Her younger self, calm. Understood, sir. Order received, respectfully declined. The recording ended there. She stared at the dead radio. Captain. The word felt like a relic from another life. She set the radio down carefully and turned back to her ammunition. Outside, gunfire intensified. They were pushing the inner perimeter. She grabbed 2 grenades and moved to the entrance. Cooked the first grenade, counted, threw, explosion, screaming. Cooked the second, threw, another explosion, silence. 4:37, 4 hours and 23 minutes. Reeves' vision blurred. She blinked hard, forced focus, low blood sugar, shock setting in. She ate an energy bar from her vest, chewed mechanically, forced it down, drank more water. Her body was failing, but her mind remained clear. Training overrode physiology. She checked her ammunition. 2 magazines for the rifle, 3 for the sidearm, 1 grenade remaining. The claymore was still set at the main corridor leading to the command bunker. Last line of defense. The enemy tested her response time, short probing attacks, pulling back before she could effectively engage. They were mapping her positions, learning her patterns. Zahir was smart, patient, willing to trade time for tactical advantage. She changed her pattern, fired from unexpected angles, used the PA system to play recorded gunfire in empty sectors, made them second-guess what was real. Psychological warfare when ammunition ran low. 5:03, 3 hours and 57 minutes. Her leg gave out. She collapsed in the corridor. Pain spiked through her thigh. The shrapnel wound had worsened. Blood seeped through her pants. She dragged herself upright using the wall, tested weight on the leg. It held barely. She would have to fight from static positions now. Movement was becoming impossible. In the command bunker, she found the locked case. She had avoided it for 4 years, had told herself it did not matter anymore. But now, with dawn still hours away and death closing in, she needed to remember why she was still fighting. She broke the lock with her combat knife. The case opened. Inside was her old uniform, pressed and folded, captain's insignia on the collar, combat action badge pinned to the chest, bronze star with V device, purple heart, ribbons she had earned through blood and fire. Beneath the uniform was a folder, official investigation documents. She opened it, read words she had memorized years ago: insubordination, refusal to obey lawful orders, conduct unbecoming, 2 casualties directly attributable to subject's decisions, recommendation for court-martial, final decision, administrative punishment, reduction in rank, permanent reassignment to non-combat duties. The next page was a letter, handwritten, from General Veylan. It was brief. You embarrassed this command, Captain. You made us look weak, incompetent. The fact that you were right makes it worse. I cannot have officers who think for themselves. You will spend the rest of your career in obscurity. Consider it mercy. She closed the folder, set it aside, picked up the uniform, held it against her chest. The fabric smelled like storage and old decisions. 0528, 3 hours and 32 minutes. The memory came unbidden. She tried to push it back, but exhaustion had stripped her defenses. Coast Valley, 2019. Forward Operating Base, Atlas. She had been a captain then. Commanded a quick reaction force, 30 soldiers, good soldiers. The base had come under attack. Overwhelming force, 96 fighters. Command had ordered immediate evacuation. Leave the local contractors behind. Leave the interpreters. Leave the civilians sheltering in the compound. Just get American personnel out. She had refused, told her team they were staying. They had trusted her, followed her, held the line for 6 hours while evacuating every civilian. 47 people saved, but 2 of her soldiers had died in the fighting. JT and Kel, her friends, her responsibility. The defense had been successful by any measure. Every civilian evacuated, enemy repelled, minimal friendly casualties, but command had not seen it that way. They saw insubordination, saw an officer who thought she knew better than generals, saw someone who had made them look weak by proving their orders were wrong. The investigation had been swift, the punishment permanent. She was stripped of her command, reduced in rank, and assigned to logistics, forgotten, buried, a warning to others. 0551, 3 hours and 9 minutes. Rive stood slowly, put the uniform back in the case. She was not that person anymore, had not been for 4 years. Tonight was not about redemption. It was about survival, about doing the job even when no one cared. Explosion. The eastern wall breached. They were inside the inner perimeter. She moved to intercept. Rifle up, sight picture, fired. Dropped the first fighter through the gap, fired again. Second fighter down. Return fire forced her into cover. She relocated to the armory, barricaded the door. This was her final position. If they breached this room, she had nowhere left to go. She stacked ammo cans as cover, set the last grenade as a booby trap on the door. If they forced entry, it would detonate. 0612, 2 hours and 48 minutes. Her watch was cracked. Blood had seeped under the crystal. But it still kept time, still counted down to dawn, to extraction. If extraction came, if the weather cleared, if command had not written her off entirely. She checked the surveillance cameras. Feeds were failing, 3 cameras offline. The remaining 3 showed enemy forces massing. They were preparing for a final assault. Everything they had. Zahir was visible in the center, rallying his fighters. His face was twisted with rage. He had lost too many men to one defender. His reputation was shattered. He would end this now or die trying. Reeve counted them through the grainy camera feed. At least 60 fighters still combat effective. Against her, 1 defender, wounded, low on ammunition, trapped in a room with 1 exit. The mathematics were simple. She would not survive the next assault. She thought about running. There was a service road, vehicles in the motor pool. She could try to escape into the mountains, but her leg would not carry her far. And abandoning the base meant abandoning everything her team had died for. Meant proving command right, that she was just stubborn, not principled. She stayed. 0635, 2 hours and 25 minutes. The assault began with mortars. Indirect fire crashing into the compound. The armory shook. Dust fell from ceiling. She covered her face, waited for the barrage to lift. When it did, she heard them coming, boots pounding, shouting. They were committing everything. She fired through the door, controlled bursts, heard screaming, reloaded, fired again. The door splintered under return fire, wood fragmenting, hinges bending. It would not hold. She transitioned to sidearm, counted rounds. 11 remaining. She put 1 magazine in her pocket, kept 1 in. The gun. If it came to the last moment, she would make it count. The door exploded inward, her grenade. The booby trap worked. Blast wave knocked her back, ears ringing. 3 fighters down in the doorway, but more behind them. Always more. She fired. Double tap, center mass, dropped 1, fired again. Another down. They returned fire. Rounds impacted around her. 1 grazed her shoulder. Hot metal kissing flesh. She kept firing. Click, empty. She reloaded her last magazine. 7 rounds. They rushed the door. She fired methodically. 1, 2, 3. Each shot a lifetime of training. 4, 5. They were inside now, close quarters. She shot the nearest fighter in the chest. 6. Transitioned to hand, used her knife, brutal, efficient. Survival stripped of grace. 0. 6:58. 1 hour and 2 minutes. She collapsed against the wall, blood everywhere, some hers, most theirs. Bodies in the doorway, bodies in the room. She was alone again, breathing hard, vision swimming. Her shoulder wound was bleeding freely. She pressed her hand against it, applied pressure, tried to slow the bleeding. Outside she heard Zahir shouting, reorganizing. They would come again. She had maybe minutes, maybe seconds. She looked around the armory for anything useful. Her eyes landed on the demolition charges, stored for base deconstruction. C4 blocks, detonators, timers. An idea formed, desperate, final. She dragged herself to the charges, set them with shaking hands, wired them to the fuel depot outside. If she could not hold the base, she could deny it. Scorched earth, nothing left for them to claim. She set the timer, 10 minutes, enough time to get to the command bunker, not enough time for them to disarm it. She activated it, red LED counting down. She pulled herself upright and limped toward the exit. 07:04, 56 minutes. Zahir was in the corridor, face to face, 5 meters apart. He had a rifle. She had her sidearm with 1 round remaining. They stared at each other, predator and prey. But which was which? He spoke in Pashto. She understood enough. Where are the others? Where are your soldiers? She coughed, tasted blood. Just me. He did not believe her. Looked past her into the armory, saw only bodies. No other defenders. His expression shifted. Disbelief, then rage. You, one woman. You killed my men. She raised her sidearm, hand steady despite everything. One captain. The words hung between them. Recognition. She saw it in his eyes. He knew what she had been, what she still was beneath the stripped rank and forgotten assignment. He raised his rifle. She fired first. Her last round. It took him in the shoulder, not fatal. He dropped his weapon and fell back, clutching the wound, screaming orders to his men. She ran, limped, dragged herself down the corridor toward the command bunker, heard them behind her, close. They were shouting, footsteps echoing. 07:09, 51 minutes. The explosion was early. She had miscalculated the timer, or the charges had been unstable. The fuel depot detonated in a massive fireball. Shockwave tore through the base. Walls buckled, windows shattered. She was thrown forward, slammed into concrete, ears ringing, blind from the flash. Heat washed over her, intense, searing. She covered her head, felt debris raining down. Metal fragments, burning fuel, the smell of ignited diesel and melting plastic. When she looked up, the corridor behind her was a wall of flame, fire blocking the path. Zahir and his fighters cut off. She could hear screaming, men burning, men dying. The fire was spreading, consuming the western half of the base. She dragged herself into the command bunker, slammed the door, locked it, slid down against the metal. Her body was shutting down, blood loss critical, multiple wounds. Exhaustion, absolute. She checked her watch through blurred vision. 07:14, 46 minutes until extraction. If extraction came, if she lived that long. She closed her eyes, just for a moment, just to rest. Her breathing was shallow, ragged, blood pooled beneath her. She was cold despite the fire outside, shock, hypothermia, her body consuming itself to stay alive. The radio crackled, faint signal. Granite Ridge, this is Falcon 6, weather clearing, approaching your position. ETA 40 minutes. She tried to respond, could not find the strength. The handset slipped from her fingers. She slumped sideways. Vision darkening. Somewhere outside, the fire roared. Somewhere beyond that, sunrise was coming. She would not see it. 07:23, 37 minutes. Her hand found the photograph in her pocket. JT and Kel, smiling, alive in that frozen moment. She looked at their faces, whispered, "I held the line, like you would have." The photograph slipped from her fingers, her eyes closed. Darkness. Outside, The enemy was retreating. What remained of them? Zahir dragged himself away from the burning base. His forces shattered. 90. 2 men committed. 14 survived, the rest dead or dying. All because of one defender, one forgotten soldier, one woman the military had thrown away. Dawn broke over the mountains, first light touching the smoke rising from forward operating base Granite Ridge. The fire burned unchecked. The compound was a ruin, but it had held. Through the night, through impossible odds. One defender against an army. In the command bunker, Reeve Calloway lay unconscious, barely breathing, blood-soaked, broken, but alive. The door was still locked. The base was still denied to the enemy. She had done her job, even when abandoned, even when forgotten, even when it cost everything. The helicopter rotors were distant, growing closer, rescue coming, too late to help, just in time to witness, just in time to count the bodies and realize what had happened here. What one person could do when left with no choice but to fight or die. 0759, 1 minute until extraction. Sometimes people hold. The line not because they will be recognized, but because someone has to. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing. Part 3 will reveal what happened when command finally arrived and saw what she had done. The Black Hawk crested the ridge at 0803, 3 minutes late. The pilot had fought headwinds and storm remnants for the last 20 kilometers. Sunrise painted the mountains in shades of amber and copper. Then he saw the smoke, black columns rising from forward operating base Granite Ridge, visible for 15 kilometers. He keyed his radio back to the convoy waiting at the staging area below. "You are going to want to see this." The words were inadequate. Nothing could prepare them. 4 Humvees rolled through the shattered gate at 0813. The lead vehicle stopped abruptly. The driver stared through the windshield. His hands were frozen on the wheel. Captain Orrin Dench sat in the passenger seat. He did not move for 10 seconds. Just looked, trying to process what he was seeing. The base was a battlefield. He opened the door slowly, stepped out. His boots crunched on something. He looked down. Shell casings. Hundreds of them scattered across the gravel like brass seeds. He took another step. More casings. Thousands. They covered the ground in drifts. The other vehicles stopped behind him. Soldiers emerged, 20 personnel total, supply convoy and security detail. They had come to retrieve equipment and 1 logistics officer. They stood in silence, looking at devastation that should not exist. The eastern perimeter fence was torn down. Sections of chain link hung from posts like torn fabric. The fuel depot was a smoking crater, 30 meters across, still smoldering. The western wall had collapsed. Buildings were pocked with bullet holes. Windows shattered, doors blown off hinges, and bodies, everywhere. A young private named Tessin was the first to speak. His voice cracked. "Sir, what happened here?" Dench did not answer, could not answer. He walked forward slowly. Each step revealed new evidence of combat, blast patterns, bloodstains, scorched earth. This was not a skirmish. This was sustained warfare. Lieutenant Harwick emerged from the second vehicle. He was 30 years old, combat veteran, 2 tours in Kandahar. He had seen firefights, ambushes, extended engagements. He walked the perimeter with professional assessment, then stopped, turned to Dench. "Sir, this was a full-scale assault. Multiple waves, coordinated, professional tactics." Dench found his voice. "How many attackers?" Harwick crouched beside a body, checked weapons, equipment, examined tactical vest. He moved to another body, then another. His face grew progressively paler. He stood and gestured toward the main gate. "You need to see this, sir." They walked to the gate together. 38 bodies, enemy combatants, sprawled in attack formation, cut down mid-assault. Harwick pointed to their positions, their spacing, their equipment. This was the lead element, breaching force. They hit the gate with RPGs, see the blast pattern. Then they pushed through. Someone engaged them from elevated position, machine gun, overlapping fields of fire, professional placement. Who? Harwick looked at him. "We left one person here, sir, Logistics Officer Calloway." Dench's face drained of color. He remembered the departure, the jokes, the casual dismissal. "Nothing ever happens here. Try not to lose anything valuable." He had been smiling when he said it, had driven away without looking back. They moved to the northern approach, 27 more bodies, different formation, second wave. These had taken cover behind vehicles and barriers. Someone had engaged them from multiple positions, made them think they faced several defenders. Sergeant Quillen was moving through the compound with a security team, clearing buildings, checking for survivors. He emerged from a bunker. His uniform was dusty. His expression was grim. He approached Dench. "Captain, you need to come with me." They walked through smoke and debris, past burning wreckage, past evidence of desperate fighting. Quillen led them to the western breach. More bodies here, a cluster of 15. These had made it inside the inner perimeter. Someone had engaged them at close range. Rifle fire, controlled, disciplined. Quillen pointed to firing positions marked by empty magazines. "She rotated between them, sir. Created the illusion of multiple defenders, sound discipline, light discipline. She used the PA system to broadcast false communications, made them think the base was fully manned." Dench stared at the positions, at the tactical sophistication, at the professional execution. This was not luck. This was training, experience, expertise that a logistics officer should not possess. "Where is she?" Quillen's expression darkened. "Command bunker. Medical team is with her now." They ran, through the compound, past more bodies, more evidence of impossible. Defense. Dench's mind was spinning, trying to reconcile what he was seeing with the woman he had dismissed. The quiet officer who counted supplies and filed reports, who never spoke unless spoken to, who seemed to fade into walls. The command bunker door was open. Medic Torres was inside, kneeling beside a figure on the floor. He looked up when they entered. His face was tight with professional concern. "She is alive, barely. Critical blood loss, multiple wounds, shrapnel, gunshots, burns. She needs immediate evacuation." Reeve Calloway lay on the concrete. Her uniform was no longer recognizable, just torn fabric soaked in blood. Her face was gray, lips blue, breathing shallow and irregular. An IV line ran into her arm. Torres had applied pressure bandages to visible wounds, but blood was seeping through. Dench knelt beside her. He had never really looked at her before, had never seen her as a person, just a name on a roster, an administrative task. Now he saw the scars on her hands, the weathered skin, the muscle definition beneath torn sleeves. This was not a desk officer. This had never been a desk officer. Torres was checking her vitals. Pulse is weak. Blood pressure critical. She has been bleeding for hours. She needs a surgical team immediately. The Black Hawk was already landing outside. Rotor wash blew dust through the open door. They loaded her onto a stretcher, moved quickly but carefully. Torres held the IV bag high, called out vital signs to the flight medic. They secured her in the helicopter, strapped down, connected monitors. Dench stood in the rotor wash watching them work, watching them fight to save someone he had left behind, someone he had joked about, someone who had just accomplished something he could barely comprehend. The helicopter lifted off, banked hard over the mountains, disappeared into morning sky. The sound faded. Silence returned. Just wind and the crackle of lingering fires. Quillen stood beside him. Both men stared at the empty sky. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Quillen broke the silence. "We need to count the bodies, sir." It took 3 hours. Teams spread across the compound and surrounding area, documenting, photographing, recording every body, every weapon, every piece of evidence. Harwick coordinated the count, used a tactical map to mark locations, created a timeline based on positions and blast patterns. When he finished, he assembled the officers in what remained of the operations center, spread the map on a damaged table. His hands were steady, but his voice was not. 92 enemy combatants engaged, 84 confirmed kills, 8 wounded escaped into the valley. We found their vehicles 5 kilometers south, abandoned. Blood trails suggest additional casualties that were evacuated. He paused. "Let the numbers sink in. Based on ammunition expenditure and defensive positions, I estimate 6 distinct waves over 8 hours. They hit every approach, used mortars for indirect fire, RPGs for breaching. Coordinated small arms assault. This was not a raid. This was an attempt to overrun and occupy. Dench stared at the map, at the defensive positions marked in red, at the attack vectors marked in blue, at the single notation at the center, Defender 1. Solo hold, Lieutenant Harwick continued. Whoever defended this base understood military tactics at an advanced level: fire discipline, position rotation, psychological warfare, use of terrain and existing fortifications. This was special operations level competence. A junior officer named Kelsey spoke up. But Calloway is logistics. She processes supply requisitions. How does a logistics officer fight like this? Quillen's voice cut through. She does not. A captain does. Everyone turned to look at him. He was holding something. An old uniform, captain's insignia on the collar. He had found it in the armory, along with other things. He spread them on the table. Bronze star with V device, Purple Heart, Combat Action Badge, Commendation Medals, and a folder. Quillen opened the folder, read aloud. Captain Reeve Calloway, Decorated Combat Officer, Multiple Deployments, Special Operations Support, then an investigation, insubordination, refusal to obey lawful orders, court-martial recommended, final decision, reduction in rank, permanent reassignment to non-combat logistics. The room was silent. Dench reached for the folder, read the details. His hands started shaking again, not from fear, from shame, from the crushing realization of what command had done, what he had participated in. There was a letter, handwritten, from General Valon. The words were brutal, clinical. You embarrassed this command, Captain. You made us look weak. The fact that you were right makes it worse. You will spend the rest of your career in obscurity. Consider it mercy. Dench set down the letter, looked at Quillen. What did she do to deserve this? Quillen pulled out another document. After Action Report from 2019. Coast Valley. Forward Operating Base. Atlas. He read the summary. Enemy force of 96 fighters attacked at dawn. Command ordered immediate evacuation. Captain Calloway refused, held position to evacuate 47 local contractors and interpreters. Defense lasted 6 hours. All civilians evacuated successfully. 2 friendly KIA. Enemy force destroyed. He looked up. She saved 47 people, lost 2 of her own team. Command buried her for it, for making them look bad, for proving their evacuation order was wrong. The room remained silent. Every officer present understood the implication. The military had taken a decorated combat leader, someone who had proven themselves under impossible circumstances, and destroyed her career for political reasons, then abandoned her at a remote base, left her to die, and she had survived, again, accomplished the impossible, again, proven herself, again, and command would have to deal with the consequences, again. Dench walked out of the operations center, stood in the compound, looking at the evidence of heroism that should never have been necessary. His career was over. He knew that. When the investigation came, when the questions were asked, his name would be attached to this failure. He had left one person at an undefended base. That person had been a combat captain in disguise. A warrior command had tried to bury, and she had just demonstrated exactly why they had feared her. He found the memorial plaque on a damaged wall. Operation Granite Shield, 2019, the names of fallen soldiers. Most were legible. One name had been redacted, heavy black marker obscuring the letters. He scraped at the ink with his knife. Beneath it, barely visible. C.P.T.R. Calloway. They had erased her from their own memorial, after she had saved 47 people, after she had held impossible odds. They had written her out of history, made her invisible, and when that proved insufficient, they had thrown her away entirely. Quillen appeared beside him. They are terrified, sir. Command. When word of this spreads, when people learn what she did, it will raise questions. Why was a decorated captain working logistics? Why was she alone at this base? Why did we abandon her? The answers make us look incompetent at best, criminally negligent at worst. Dench nodded slowly. They will classify it, bury it. Make sure no one knows? Probably. But we know. Everyone here knows. And she knows. That is what matters. The investigation team arrived 6 hours later. Full bird colonel named Mathers. Intelligence analysts, legal officers. They secured the site, interviewed personnel, examined evidence. Mathers walked the perimeter in silence, counted bodies, studied defensive positions. His expression never changed. After 4 hours, he assembled the convoy personnel, stood before them with hands clasped behind his back. His voice was flat, emotionless, professional. What happened here will be classified. You will sign non-disclosure agreements. You will not discuss this operation with anyone outside this investigation. You will not speak to media. You will not post on social networks. You will not mention it to family. This is not a request. This is an order backed by national security concerns. Violation will result in court-martial. Am I clear? Everyone nodded, signed documents, became complicit in the burial of truth. Mathers turned to Dench. Captain, you will be relieved of command pending formal inquiry. You will report to CENTCOM headquarters for debriefing. Transport leaves in 2 hours. Dench expected this, accepted it. He had earned it. Yes, sir. Mathers leaned closer, spoke quietly so only Dench could hear. Between us, you should hope Officer Calloway survives. If she dies, this becomes a negligent homicide investigation. And you are the officer who left her here alone. Pray she makes it. She will, Dench found himself saying. She has survived worse. Mathers studied him, then nodded. For your sake, I hope you are right. 72 hours later, Reeve woke in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, Germany, the premier military hospital in Europe. White walls, fluorescent lights, the steady beep of monitors, antiseptic smell mixing with something metallic, blood, still present beneath the cleaning. She tried to move, could not. Her body was lead, distant, disconnected. She tried to speak. Her throat was raw, swollen. A ventilator tube had been removed recently. She could feel the residual damage. A nurse appeared, young, efficient. She checked monitors, adjusted IV drips, spoke in a calm, professional voice. You are awake. Good. Do not try to move yet. You have been in surgery 3 times. Your body needs rest. Reeve's eyes moved, assessing. Military habit. 2 IV lines. Catheter, chest tube. Her left arm was immobilized, her right leg elevated. Bandages everywhere. She did not need to be told. She could feel the damage, cataloged it automatically. Shrapnel removal, bullet extraction, muscle repair. Significant blood loss, transfusions. The nurse continued. You have been unconscious for 3 days. We kept you sedated. Your injuries were extensive. The surgeons did excellent work. You will recover, but it will take time. Reeve tried to speak again. This time sound emerged, barely a whisper, ragged. The base. The nurse paused, then smiled slightly. Secure. You held it. That is what they told me to tell you when you woke. The base is secure. Something released in Reeve's chest, tension she had been holding for days, for years. The mission was complete. She had done her job. That was all that mattered. Her eyes closed, not from exhaustion, from relief. The nurse squeezed her hand gently. Rest now. You have visitors waiting. But the doctors want you stable first. Sleep. Heal. There is time. Reeve slept, dreamlessly. Her body focusing all energy on repair, on survival, on preparing for whatever came next. When she woke again, it was night. The room was dark except for monitor glow. Someone was sitting in the chair beside her bed. She turned her head slowly. Pain spiked through her neck. Quillen was there, reading a magazine by small booklight. When he sensed her movement, he looked up, set down the magazine. You are awake. Again. That is becoming a habit. Her voice was stronger, still rough but functional. How long? 5 days total. The surgeons are impressed. Your vitals are stabilizing faster than expected. They say you have exceptional recovery capacity. She almost smiled. Training. The body learned to heal quickly when survival depended on it. Years of injuries, years of recovery. The body adapted. Quillen leaned forward. I need to tell you something. Before the others arrive, before the official briefings. You should know what happened after we found you. He told her everything. The body count. the investigation, the classification order, Dench's relief, the discovery of her old uniform and records, the spreading rumors among soldiers who had seen the battlefield, the command response, the containment efforts. Reeve listened without reaction. She had expected all of this. The military protected itself. Always. Truth was dangerous. Heroism that exposed incompetence was especially dangerous. They would bury this. Bury her again. She had known that when she decided to stay, when she decided to fight. Quillen finished, waited for her response. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost resigned. They will offer me things. Rank, recognition, position. It is theater, damage control. They want me quiet, probably. What will you tell them? No. He blinked. No. I do not want their rank. I do not want their recognition. I do not want their apology. I want JT and Kell on the Coast Memorial, names visible, not redacted. That is all. Quillen nodded slowly. Already done. I made sure of it myself. Their names were restored 3 days ago. Full honors. Public ceremony. Families notified. Good. Then I want to go back to work. Quillen stared at her. You nearly died. You sustained life-threatening injuries. You need months of recovery, physical therapy, psychological evaluation. You cannot just go back to work. I can. I will. That is what I do. Sergeant, I work. I show up. That does not change. He shook his head, smiled despite himself. You are impossible. You know that. So I have been told. The door opened. Doctors entered. 3 of them. Led by a trauma surgeon named Parek. She was 50 years old. Gray hair pulled back. Experienced hands and tired eyes. She had seen thousands of combat casualties. Knew what recovery looked like. What survival cost. She checked Reeve's vitals personally. Examined wounds. Asked questions. Tested responses. Then she stepped back. Crossed her arms. You should not be alive. You lost 40% of your blood volume. Multiple organ stress. Sepsis risk from contaminated wounds. You survived 8 hours of combat with injuries that should have incapacitated you. Then you survived 3 major surgeries. Your body is remarkable. Reeve said nothing. What was there to say? She had survived because stopping was not an option. The body followed what the mind demanded. She had demanded survival. Her body had complied. Parek continued. You will remain here for 2 more weeks, then transfer stateside for extended rehabilitation. Physical therapy will be intensive. You have muscle damage that needs supervised recovery. Rushing this will cause permanent disability. Do you understand? I understand. Do you agree? I do not have a choice, doctor. Parek smiled grimly. No, you do not. I am giving you medical orders. You will follow them. Even if you are superhuman on the battlefield, you are still human in my hospital. Am I clear? Clear. Good. Now rest. You have visitors tomorrow. Command. They will want answers, explanations, statements. You do not have to give them anything. Legally, you can refuse while under medical care. Consider that option. Why would you tell me that? Because I read your file. All of it. What they did to you. What you did for them. You do not owe them anything. Remember that. She left. The other doctors followed. Quillen remained. He stood to leave, but paused at the door. For what it is worth, Reeve, every soldier who was at that base, who saw what you did, they know. We know. Command can classify it, can bury it, can threaten us. But we know, and we will remember. That counts for something. Does it? He considered, then nodded. Yes, it does. Maybe not in official records, maybe not in promotions or medals, but in the only place that matters. Among those who understand what it means to stand when everyone else runs, you have their respect. All of them. Forever. He left. Reeve was alone with her thoughts, with her pain, with the knowledge of what she had accomplished and what it would cost her. Nothing had changed. She was still buried, still forgotten officially, still a logistics officer processing paperwork. But something had shifted, subtly, invisibly. Among the people who mattered, she was seen, acknowledged, respected. Maybe that was enough. The generals arrived the next day, Valon and Marist, both in dress uniform, ribbons and badges polished. They carried themselves with the authority of men accustomed to obedience, to control. They entered her hospital room like they owned it, like they owned her. Dench was with them. He looked diminished, shoulders slumped, uniform less crisp. Relief of command had marked him visibly. He would not meet her eyes. Valen pulled a chair close to her bed, sat without asking permission, studied her with cold assessment. She met his gaze without blinking, without fear. What could they do to her now? They had already done their worst. She had survived anyway. Captain Calloway, Logistics Officer Calloway. The correction hung in the air. Valen's jaw tightened. Then he corrected himself. We reviewed the incident at Granite Ridge, interviewed personnel, examined evidence, analyzed defensive tactics, consulted with Special Operations Command. What you accomplished is beyond remarkable. It is unprecedented in modern warfare. Maris stepped forward. 92 confirmed enemy combatants. 8-hour sustained defense. Solo operation. There is no tactical precedent. No training scenario that covers this. You improvised defensive doctrine under impossible circumstances and succeeded. Reeve said nothing. Let them talk. Let them build to whatever they were offering. She already knew she would refuse. Whatever they wanted, it came with strings. With control. With silence. Valen leaned forward. We made mistakes regarding your previous service. The Coast Valley incident. The investigation was hasty, politically motivated. The decision to reduce your rank and reassign you was unjust. We acknowledge that now. Do you? The words were flat, empty of emotion. Valen paused, uncertain how to interpret her tone. Maris tried. We are prepared to offer full reinstatement of rank, retroactive to the date of your reassignment. Back pay. Restoration of all honors. Command position commensurate with your experience and demonstrated abilities. Staff position at JSOC. Strategic planning. Training development. You would be instrumental in improving defensive doctrine across all branches. Reeve looked at them both, then at Dench, who was staring at the floor. She understood what this was. Theater, public relations. They needed her cooperation, needed her silence. If she accepted their offer, she would be bound by their control, would become complicit in the burial of truth, would validate their system by rejoining it. She spoke clearly, slowly, no. The single word dropped like a stone into still water. Valen blinked. I am sorry, I said no. I do not want reinstatement. I do not want command. I do not want your staff position. Marist's expression tightened. You are refusing a direct commission. Do you understand what you are turning down? Yes. I understand. Perfectly. Dench finally looked up, voice quiet. The Medal of Honor is being discussed. Congressional approval is likely given the circumstances. Full military funeral escort. National recognition. Your name in history books. Reeve turned her gaze to him, held it until he looked away again. She spoke without anger, without bitterness, just certainty. I do not want your medal. I do not want recognition. I do not want my name in history books. Valen stood abruptly. Then, what do you want, Captain? What would satisfy you? What would make this right? I want JT and Kell on the Coast Memorial, not redacted, their names visible with the others who fell. I want their sacrifice acknowledged publicly, with their families present, with full honors already done 3 days ago. Their names were restored, families were notified, ceremony was conducted. Is there nothing else? Then I want to go back to work. The 3 officers exchanged glances, confusion, disbelief. Maris spoke carefully. You want to return to logistics, after what you have done, after what you have proven. Yes, that makes no sense. You are wasting your abilities, your experience. You could train thousands of soldiers, could improve defensive doctrine, could save lives through institutional change, or I could do my job. The one I have been assigned, the one I am qualified for. That is what I want. Valen's face reddened. You are being obstinate, childish. This is an opportunity most officers would sacrifice careers for. Reeve's expression did not change. I already sacrificed my career, General. You took it 4 years ago. Now you offer to return it because my survival embarrasses you, because you need me quiet, compliant, grateful. I am none of those things. I will not be. The room fell silent, the truth exposed, stripped of pretense. They needed her cooperation. She was refusing, and there was nothing they could do. She had followed orders, had defended assigned position, had accomplished mission. Objectives. They could not punish her, could only try to control her through reward. And she was refusing the bait. Maris tried a different approach, voice softer. Consider the larger picture. Your story could inspire thousands, could demonstrate that individual excellence matters, could change military culture. My story will be classified. You already issued the order, national security concerns. Everyone who witnessed it has signed non-disclosure agreements. You are burying this as thoroughly as you buried Coast Valley. Do not pretend otherwise. Valan's voice went cold. You are correct. This incident will be classified for operational security reasons, to protect intelligence sources, to prevent enemy forces from learning defensive tactics. It is necessary. Then we have nothing more to discuss. You will classify it. I will return to work. That is all. She closed her eyes. Dismissal. Clear. Final. The general stood there for a moment longer, unwilling to accept defeat. But they had no leverage, no authority over someone who wanted nothing from them. Valan turned to leave, paused at the door. You are making a mistake, Captain. This obstinance will not serve you. The military has a long memory. So do I, General. So do I. They left. Dench remained, stood uncertainly near the door. Reeve opened her eyes, looked at him. He was broken. She could see it, the guilt, the shame, the knowledge of what he had done, what he had been part of. He spoke quietly. I did not know. About your past, about what you were. If I had known, you would have what? Not left me. Not joked about paper clips, not dismissed me as furniture. Her voice was not cruel, just honest. You did not know because you did not care to know. I was convenient, forgettable, easy to ignore. That is why I was there. That is why they put me there. Dench nodded. You are right. I am sorry. That is inadequate, but it is true. Your career is over. You know that. Yes, good. Maybe you will learn something from it. Maybe the next forgotten person you encounter, you will see them. Really see them. That would be worth something. He left. Shoulders slumped further, carrying the weight of failure, of negligence, of participation in a system that buried excellence and rewarded mediocrity. Quillen returned an hour later. He had been waiting outside during the meeting. He sat down, looked at her with something like awe. You actually told them no. All of it. Yes. You know they will never forgive that. They offered you everything. You refused. They will make sure you spend the rest of your career in obscurity. True obscurity, not just logistics. They will bury you so deep that no one will ever find you. I know. I do not care. I do not want what they offer. I want to do my job. That is all I have ever wanted. Quillen shook his head, smiled. You are the most stubborn person I have ever met. Also the bravest. Also the most frustrating. Thank you, Sergeant. That was not entirely a compliment. I know. The days blurred together. Physical therapy was brutal, relearning to walk without a limp, rebuilding strength in her damaged arm, stretching scar tissue, pushing through pain that would make most people quit. She did not quit, never considered it. This was just another mission, another objective. She would complete it. The therapists were impressed, then concerned, then worried. She pushed too hard, ignored pain signals, worked through exhaustion. They had to order her to rest, to take days off. She complied grudgingly, but only because medical orders were orders. She understood chain of command. On the 15th day, she was cleared for transfer. Stateside. Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland. Continued rehabilitation. Psychological evaluation. Standard protocol for combat trauma. The flight across the Atlantic was quiet. She sat alone. Other wounded soldiers filled the aircraft, some sleeping, some staring at nothing, some crying quietly, all processing their own wars, their own losses, their own survival. A young Marine sat across from her, missing his left leg below the knee. He was staring at the empty space where his foot used to be, processing the permanence, the change, the loss. He noticed her watching, tried to smile, Failed. You get used to it. That is what they tell me, that I will adapt, that I will learn to walk again, to run, to be normal. Do you believe that? Reeve considered her answer carefully. You will adapt. You will learn new ways to move, to function, to live. Whether that constitutes normal is up to you. Normal is overrated anyway. He laughed, short, bitter. You sound like you know. I do. What happened to you? If you do not mind me asking, I held a position. For a while, it left marks. He nodded. We all have marks, some visible, some not. Yours look pretty visible. The invisible ones are worse. He absorbed that, then spoke quietly. Thank you for being honest. Everyone else tells me it will be fine, that I will be fine. You are the first person to just tell me it will be hard but possible. That is more helpful than you know. Good luck, Marine. You too. Whatever your fight is. Walter Reed was efficiency and routine, evaluations, therapy sessions, psychological assessments. She went through them mechanically, answered questions, followed protocols, gave them what they needed to check boxes, to clear her for duty. The psychologist was a man named Okonk W.O., Nigerian accent, gentle eyes. 2 decades of experience with combat trauma. He interviewed her for 2 hours on the first session, asked careful questions, listened more than he spoke. At the end, he set down his notes, leaned back. You are not telling me everything. I am answering your questions. That is not the same thing. You are providing responses, surface level, sufficient for evaluation purposes. But you are not engaging, not processing, not dealing with trauma. There is nothing to process. I did my job. I survived. That is all. You held a forward operating base alone for 8 hours against nearly 100 attackers. You were wounded multiple times, lost critical amounts of blood, came within minutes of death. That is trauma. Your body knows it even if your mind refuses to acknowledge it. My mind is fine. Is it? Do you sleep? Yes. Without nightmares. She paused. He caught it, noted it. That is what I thought. You are experiencing combat stress. PTSD. Survivor's guilt. Hypervigilance. These are normal responses to extraordinary circumstances. They do not make you weak. They make you human. I am handling it. You are suppressing it. That is different. Eventually it will surface, usually at the worst possible time. I am recommending continued counseling, weekly sessions minimum. That is not necessary. It is mandatory. My evaluation determines your return to duty. You want to return to duty. Therefore, you will attend counseling. Am I clear? Clear. Good. Now, tell me about Coast Valley. She stiffened. That is classified. The incident is classified. Your feelings about it are not. You lost 2 soldiers under your command. You have been carrying that for 4 years. Talk to me. There is nothing to say. They died. I lived. That is war. That is survivor's guilt. Classic presentation. You believe you should have died instead. Or at least you believe you are responsible for their deaths. Are you? Yes. Why? I commanded them. I kept them in danger when command ordered evacuation. They died because of my decision. They also saved 47 people because of your decision. Do you weigh that? Every day. And what conclusion do you reach? That I would make the same decision again, and that I would carry the same guilt. Both things are true simultaneously. Okonkwo nodded. That is progress, more than you realize. Most officers in your position cannot hold both truths. They either defend their decision absolutely or condemn themselves absolutely. You understand nuance, complexity. That will serve you well. The sessions continued, twice weekly. She attended because she had to, participated minimally. But something was shifting, slowly, invisibly. The constant vigilance was softening. The nightmares were less frequent. She was healing, not just physically, deeper. 6 weeks into rehabilitation, Quillen visited. He had been reassigned to a training post in Virginia. He brought coffee, real coffee, not hospital cafeteria sludge. They sat in the courtyard. Trees were changing color, autumn arriving. You look better, less like death. Thank you, I think. He smiled. I have news. Dench was given an administrative discharge, not honorable, not dishonorable, just out. His career is over. He is working private security now. Checking IDs at a corporate office park. Good, harsh, accurate. He earned it. Quillen did not disagree. More news. Lieutenant Bryn. Remember her from the departure. She has been asking about you. Wants to know where you will be assigned next. She requested transfer to the same posting. Why? Because she saw what you did, heard the stories. She wants to learn from you. Thinks you can teach her things the Academy cannot. I am not a teacher. You taught me. Whether you intended to or not, you taught everyone at Granite Ridge. We learned what one person can do when they refuse to quit, when they refuse to compromise, when they stand alone because standing alone is necessary. That is worth more than any classroom instruction. Reeve drank her coffee, thought about Bryn, young, eager, unbroken by the system. Maybe she could be taught. Maybe there was value in passing forward what she had learned through blood and fire. Maybe that was how knowledge survived, through transmission, through mentorship, through quiet conversations in forgotten places. Tell her yes. If command assigns us together, I will teach her. But she needs to understand. I do not teach glory, I teach survival, I teach duty. I teach how to stand when standing costs everything. If she wants that, she can learn it. Quillen nodded. I will tell her. She will accept. Trust me. What is happening with the classification? The incident report. Buried. Completely. Filed under Special Access Program. Restricted to a handful of senior officers. Everyone else who was there has been reassigned to different posts. Spread out, isolated, making sure no single unit has enough witnesses to piece together the truth. Expected, predicted. Unsurprising, yes. But word still spreads, quietly, through unofficial channels. Soldiers talk. They know something happened at Granite Ridge, something extraordinary. The details are fuzzy, exaggerated. But the core truth survives. One defender held an entire base. That story is spreading, slowly, invisibly. It will become legend eventually, distorted by retellings, but remembered. Does that matter? To you, probably not. To everyone else, yes. Legends inspire. They provide examples. They show what is possible. Your story, even in corrupted form, will make soldiers better. Will make them believe in themselves. Will make them willing to stand when standing is necessary. That matters. The weeks turned to months. Rehabilitation continued. She regained full mobility. Her arm was scarred but functional. Her leg was strong. Her endurance returned. The medical board cleared her for duty. Full clearance, no restrictions. She was ready to return to work. The assignment came through official channels. Forward Operating Base, Sentinel Ridge, Remote, Border Region, Logistics Officer, Solo Posting. Exactly what she had asked for. Exactly what command wanted. Keep her isolated. Keep her forgotten. Keep her where she could not embarrass anyone. She packed her single duffel bag, said goodbye to medical staff who had kept her alive, to therapists who had rebuilt her body, to Okonkwo who had helped rebuild her mind. He gave her his card. If you need to talk, anytime, day or night, call. This work is never finished. Healing is ongoing. Remember that. She took the card, nodded, knew she would. Probably never call, but appreciated the gesture, the recognition that wounds lasted longer than scars. The flight to the border region was commercial, then military transport, then finally a supply convoy that dropped her at Sentinel Ridge's gate. The base was identical to Granite Ridge. Same layout, same structures, same forgotten atmosphere, like déjà vu engineered by institutional indifference. Lieutenant Bryn met her at the gate, 25 years old, clean uniform, eager expression. She saluted sharply. Officer Calloway, I am Lieutenant Bryn. I requested this posting. I want to learn from you. Reeve returned the salute, studied her, saw herself years ago. Before Coast, before the investigation, before the burial, young and believing the system rewarded merit. It would be cruel to let that innocence persist, but it would be crueler to destroy it prematurely. Let her learn through experience, through observation, through the slow accumulation of truth that came from paying attention. Why do you want to learn from me, Lieutenant? Because you did something impossible. Because you survived when you should have died. Because you stood alone when everyone else left. I want to know how. That is the wrong question. Bryn faltered. What is the right question? Why? Why did I stand? That is more important than how. The how is just tactics, techniques, mechanics. Anyone can learn those. The why is character, conviction, the willingness to endure when endurance seems pointless. That is what separates survivors from casualties. Teach me both then. Please. Rive nodded. We start tomorrow, 0500, physical training, then perimeter patrol, then equipment inventory, then tactical review, then we repeat, every day, until you understand. Understood, ma'am. And Lieutenant, I do not teach glory, I do not teach heroism, I teach duty. If that is insufficient, request transfer now. No judgment. It is sufficient, ma'am. More than sufficient. Good. Dismissed. The days fell into rhythm. Brutal. Repetitive. Focused. They ran the perimeter every morning, 5 kilometers, full gear, then they walked it, checking fences, testing cameras, noting weak points. Then they inventoried equipment, cataloged every weapon, every round, every piece of gear. Then they reviewed tactics, fire lanes, defensive positions, response protocols. Bryn was exhausted, overwhelmed, but she kept showing up, kept asking questions, kept learning. She was smart, quick, adaptive. She would be good, maybe better than good. On the 10th day, Bryn asked the question Reeve had been waiting for. Why do we do this? We are logistics. Why do we train like infantry? Why do we prepare for combat that will never come? Reeve was checking camera feeds, did not look up, because assuming safety is how people die, because being prepared is better than being lucky, because someday, maybe never, but someday, you might be alone, abandoned, forgotten, and you will need to know how to survive. That day might never come, but if it does, you will be ready. That is why. Bryn absorbed this, then asked, "What is Granite Ridge?" Reeve's hands stopped moving. She looked at Bryn. "Where did you hear that name?" "Rumors, stories, soldiers talk. They say something happened there, something classified, something involving you." "I want to know the truth. The truth is classified. I cannot discuss it." "Then tell me what you can. Please. I need to understand who I am learning from." Reeve considered, weighed operational security against the value of honesty. Finally spoke. Granite Ridge was a forward operating base scheduled for closure. I was assigned to conduct final inventory. The base was attacked. I defended it. That is all I can say. How many attackers? Classified. How long? Classified. How many defenders? Reeve looked at her directly. 1. Bryn's expression shifted. Understanding. Disbelief. Awe. "You held an entire base alone. I held my assigned position, for as long as necessary. That is my job. That is always my job. How? By refusing to stop, by making every shot count, by using every advantage, by accepting that death was possible but not certain, by standing because sitting was surrender. That is how." Bryn was silent for a long moment. Then, "Will you teach me that? How to stand when standing seems impossible." "That is what I have been teaching you, Lieutenant. Every morning, every drill, every review. This is how you stand. Through preparation, through discipline, through the absolute refusal to quit. You are already learning it. You just did not recognize it yet. I recognize it now. Good. Then tomorrow we start close quarters combat drills. If you are going to stand, you need to know how to fight when they get inside your perimeter, when distance weapons are useless, when it becomes personal." The training continued, intensified. Bryn improved rapidly, her shooting, her tactical awareness, her ability to think under pressure. She was becoming what Reeve had been. What? She still was. A soldier who could stand alone if necessary, who would not break when breaking seemed inevitable. Quillen arrived 6 months into the rotation, reassigned to Sentinel Ridge. He walked through the gate with his duffel bag and a grin, dropped his gear and looked around. This place looks familiar, disturbingly familiar. It should. It is the same as Granite Ridge, by design. Command has a sense of humor, dark, twisted, but present. "How have you been, Sergeant? Alive? You. The same." He noticed Bryn running drills nearby. She was practicing immediate action drills, responding to contact from multiple directions. Her movements were sharp, professional. He whistled appreciatively. You trained her well. She trains herself. I just provide structure and the impossible standards that make her better. That too. Over the following months, the three of them formed a small unit. Unofficial, unrecognized, but real. They trained together, patrolled together, shared meals and silence. They were preparing, always preparing, for scenarios that seemed paranoid, for threats that seemed unlikely. But after Granite Ridge, unlikely meant nothing. Possible was all that mattered. One night they sat together watching the sunset. The mountains were purple and gold. Wind carried the smell of dust and distant snow. Quillen broke the silence. Do you think it will happen again? Another Granite Ridge. Rave was cleaning her rifle. Did not look up. Eventually, different place, different circumstances, but eventually. Will you be ready? Always. Bryn spoke quietly. Will I be ready? Reeve looked at her, studied her, saw the improvement, the confidence, the competence, then nodded. Yes, you will be ready. When the moment comes, you will know what to do. You will stand. That is what I have taught you. What if I am scared? Then you will stand while scared. Courage is not absence of fear, Lieutenant. It is action despite fear. You will be terrified, overwhelmed, certain you will die, and you will fight anyway, because that is who you are becoming. Bryn nodded, squared her shoulders. Thank you, ma'am. For what? For seeing me, for teaching me, for making me better. You did that yourself. I just provided obstacles. Good obstacles, though, the best kind. A year passed, then notification came. Reeve was being rotated again, this time to Pentagon liaison position, headquarters, desk work. The military's way of keeping her close but controlled, visible but neutered. They wanted her where they could watch her, where she could not cause more embarrassment. She accepted without complaint. Another assignment, another duty station. It made no difference. She would do her job wherever they sent her. That was who she was. Bryn was devastated. You are leaving, but I am not done learning. You will never be done learning, Lieutenant. That is the point. You learn until you die. You adapt. You improve. You prepare. Every single day. That does not require my presence. It requires your commitment. What if I need help, guidance? Then you figure it out. Like I did. Like everyone does. There are no teachers in combat. No instructors when the bullets are real. Just you and your training and your willingness to survive. That is enough. It has to be. Will I see you again? Maybe. Maybe not. The military is large. Assignments are random. But if you remember what I taught you, if you pass it forward to the next person, then I will always be with you. Knowledge survives through transmission. That is how we endure. They shook hands, formal, professional, but there was weight to it, recognition, respect, the passing of something valuable from one generation to the next. Quillen drove her to the airfield. They rode in silence. At the terminal, he finally spoke. You made a difference here, to Bryn, to others. They will remember you. Good. Maybe they will stand when they need to. That is all I can ask. What about you? What do you want? To do my job. That is all I have ever wanted. That is all I will ever want. That is not enough, Reeve. You deserve more. Deserve is irrelevant. I have work. I have purpose. I have people who learned from me and will carry forward what I taught them. That is more than most people get. That is sufficient. He did not argue, just nodded. Understood on a level beyond words. The Pentagon was glass and bureaucracy. Reeve's office was small, third floor, window overlooking parking lot. Her desk was regulation, her computer older. Her work was coordinating supply chains between logistics and operations, reviewing requisitions, tracking inventory, optimizing distribution. Important work. Unglamorous, invisible. Exactly what she excelled at. Other officers avoided her. They knew her story. Whispers had spread despite classification. The woman from Granite Ridge, the one who made generals uncomfortable, dangerous to associate with. Career poison. Better to pretend she did not exist. She ate lunch alone, worked through most lunches anyway. Went home to her small apartment, cooked simple meals, read tactical manuals, ran every morning before dawn, maintained her readiness just in case. Always just in case. One afternoon, a young captain approached her desk, nervous, uncertain. He cleared his throat. "Officer Calloway, I have a question about defensive logistics, pre-positioned supplies for extended operations. I heard you have experience with this." "I do." "What is your question?" he asked. She answered, thoroughly, professionally, shared knowledge accumulated through experience. He took notes, thanked her, left. The next day, another officer came. Different question, same pattern, then another, then more. Word was spreading, quietly, unofficially. If you wanted real answers about logistics under combat conditions, you asked Calloway. She knew things textbooks did not cover, scenarios the academy did not teach. She had lived what others theorized about. She became an unofficial resource, a consultant no one formally acknowledged. Officers would stop by with questions. She would answer, brief, precise, practical. She never sought credit, never requested recognition. Just helped. Because helping made soldiers better, made them more likely to survive. That mattered more than ego. 6 months into the assignment, she received a call. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" A familiar voice. "Officer Calloway. This is Colonel Mathers. We met at Granite Ridge during the investigation." She remembered. The classification officer. The man who had buried the truth. "I remember, Colonel. I am calling unofficially. I have been reviewing something. Old files, historical records. I wanted you to know. Your actions at Granite Ridge have been analyzed by Special Operations Command. Your defensive tactics are being studied, incorporated into training doctrine, anonymously, of course. But your influence is real, measurable. I was not aware. You were not supposed to be. But I thought you should know. What you did matters. It is making soldiers better, safer, more capable. That is your legacy. Whether or not it bears your name. Thank you for telling me, Colonel." He paused, then spoke more quietly. "For what it is worth, I think the classification was wrong. I think your story should be public. I think you deserve recognition. But I do not make those decisions. I just wanted you to know that some of us see you, some of us understand." The call ended. Reeve set down her phone, stared at it, processing. Her work was being used. Her experience was teaching others. Anonymously, invisibly, but real. That was more than she had expected, more than she had hoped for. Maybe it was enough. Years passed, routine became life. Work, exercise, preparation, quiet evenings, occasional visits from Quillen, letters from Bryn, who was thriving at her own posting. Word that others she had trained were doing well, making rank, leading soldiers, passing forward what they had learned. She attended the Coast Valley Memorial on the anniversary every year, stood before the names of JT and Kell, spoke to them silently, told them about her year, about the soldiers she had trained, about the impact she was having, about how their sacrifice continued to matter. One year, an older woman approached, gray hair, weathered face, kind eyes. She stood beside Reeve, looked at the memorial, then spoke quietly. "You are Captain Calloway. I recognize you from photographs, from when my son was alive." Reeve turned. "Which one?" The woman pointed. "Specialist Jurek Tam, JT. He wrote to me about you. Said you were the best officer he ever served under. Said you cared about your soldiers more than your career. He was right. I am sorry for your loss. He was a good soldier, a good man. He chose to stay with you at Coast Valley. When command ordered evacuation, he could have left. You gave them the choice. He stayed. That was his decision. He never regretted it. His last letter said he saved people. 47 people. He said that mattered, that you taught him that mattering was more important than surviving." Reeve's throat tightened. "I tried to bring them all home. You brought 47 people home. My son and Sergeant Priest made that possible. Do not diminish their choice by taking all the responsibility. They chose. Honor that choice by acknowledging their agency. It was wisdom earned through grief, through years of processing loss." Reeve nodded slowly. "You are right. Thank you." The woman smiled, touched the engraved name, then turned to Reeve. "He would be proud of you, of what you have done, of who you have become. I am proud of you, for what that is worth from a stranger. It is worth everything. Thank you." The woman left. Reeve remained, looking at the names, feeling something shift. Release. The guilt was still there, would always be there. But it was balanced now, by recognition that her soldiers had chosen, had acted with agency, had accomplished something meaningful. Their deaths were tragic, but not meaningless. That distinction mattered. She visited the memorial less frequently after that, not because she forgot, but because she had found peace, resolution, the kind that came not from external validation, but from internal acceptance. More years passed. She was approaching 25 years of service. Retirement became a possibility, an option. She considered it. Could leave with pension, could find civilian work, could finally rest. But rest felt wrong, incomplete. She was still capable, still useful, still preparing for the next impossible thing. Retirement would mean surrender, acceptance that her best years were behind her. She refused to believe that. She requested extension. 5 more years. Command approved. Probably glad to keep her buried where she could not cause problems. She did not care about their motivations, only about continuing her work, her purpose. On her 27th year of service, she received an envelope, hand-delivered, no return, address. Inside was a single photograph, current, recent, showed a forward operating base, soldiers training. One of them was clearly instructing the others, demonstrating defensive positions. The instructor was Bryn, now a captain, teaching others what Reeve had taught her. On the back of the photograph, a note, "Your lessons saved my life. Now I am passing them forward. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for teaching me when others would not. You are not forgotten. You never will be. Captain Bryn." Reeve put the photograph on her desk. Beside the one of JT and Kel, 3 generations now, her mentors, herself, her student. The chain continuing, knowledge surviving, purpose extending beyond any single life. That evening she sat on her apartment balcony, the same balcony where she had sat years before, after Granite Ridge, after recovery, after accepting that official recognition would never come. The sun was setting, painting the sky in familiar colors, gold and red and purple. She held her coffee, looked at the horizon, thought about her career, about the base she had held alone, about the soldiers she had trained, about the impact she had made despite the system's best efforts to bury her. She thought about JT and Kel, about their choice to stay, about the 47 people who lived because of that choice, about how their sacrifice continued to ripple forward, teaching others, inspiring others, mattering. She thought about Bryn and Quillen and all the others she had influenced, how they were better because of her, how they would teach others, how the chain would continue long after she was gone. She thought about Command, about Valan and Marist and Dench, about how they had tried to bury her, how they had failed, not because she fought them, but because truth survived despite suppression, because excellence could not be hidden forever, because people recognized real competence when they saw it. She smiled, small, quiet, private. The system had not won. She had endured, had thrived in her own way, had made a difference that mattered more than any medal or promotion ever could. The sun dropped below the horizon. Darkness came. She finished her coffee, stood, went inside. Tomorrow would bring more work, more preparation, more opportunities to help, to teach, to stand. She was ready. She would always be ready. Because that was who she was, not a hero, not a legend, not a decorated officer, just a soldier who showed up, who did her job, who held the line when holding the line was necessary. And that would always be enough. If you know someone who carries weight others never see, someone who stands when standing seems impossible, someone whose quiet excellence makes the world better without recognition or reward, share their story. Not for fame, just so someone remembers. These stories matter because they show us what is possible when we refuse to quit. If this resonated with you, I would be honored if you subscribed, not for algorithms or metrics, but because stories like Reeve's need to be told, need to be remembered, need to inspire the next person who finds themselves alone, abandoned, and refusing to surrender. Thank you for bearing witness.
I think what stayed with me most about this story is not the numbers, not the 92 attackers or the 8 hours or even the impossibility of what she did. What stayed with me is the quiet, the way she packed her gear at the end and just moved to the next assignment. No ceremony, no anger, just this calm acceptance that the system would never acknowledge what happened. And she was okay with that. That makes me uncomfortable, honestly, because part of me wanted her to demand recognition, to force them to see what they had done, to make them apologize publicly. But she did not. And I kept asking myself why that bothered me so much. I think it is because we are taught that justice looks like vindication, like the moment when everyone realizes they were wrong and you were right. But her version of justice was just continuing to exist, continuing to do her work, refusing to let their burial of her determine her worth. What I could not stop thinking about was the morning after Granite Ridge, when they found her barely alive and started counting bodies, the moment when Captain Dench realized who she actually was. Not because she told him, but because the evidence was undeniable. She had proven herself in the only language that mattered, and it still was not enough to change the system. That realization hits differently. There is one moment in this story that I keep returning to. It is not the combat. It is not even the confrontation with the generals in the hospital. It is the moment when Lieutenant Bryn asks her why she is in logistics if she was a decorated captain, and Reeves' answer is just, because someone has to count the paper clips. That line stopped me, because it is not bitter, it is not sarcastic. She actually means it. She has taken the punishment that was designed to humiliate her, to erase her, and she has found dignity in it anyway, not by fighting it, not by proving it wrong, but by doing the work so well that it becomes undeniable. What makes this moment so powerful is what it says about how we survive systems that do not want us. We are taught that resistance looks like confrontation, like fighting back loudly. But sometimes resistance is quieter. It is showing up every day to a job that was meant to break you and refusing to be broken. It is finding purpose in work that others dismiss. It is maintaining your standards even when no one is watching. That is a kind of strength that does not get stories written about it, but it is the strength that most people actually need, the strength to endure, to persist, to keep going when there is no audience and no reward. That moment showed me that heroism is not always about the spectacular. Sometimes it is about the refusal to quit when quitting would be justified. This story is really about what happens when institutions fear competence more than they value it. Command did not bury Reeve because she failed. They buried her because she succeeded in a way that exposed their failure. She made the right call when they made the wrong one. And instead of learning from that, instead of celebrating her judgment, they punished her for it. That tells us something important about how power protects itself. It is not enough to follow orders. You have to follow them in a way that does not make leadership look bad. You have to succeed within the boundaries they set, even when those boundaries are wrong. Step outside them, even for the right reasons, and you become dangerous. Not because you are incompetent, because you are too competent. What fascinates me is how this plays out with the people around her. The junior soldiers who saw what she did at Granite Ridge, they knew. They saluted her in that hallway, not because of her rank, but because they recognized real leadership when they saw it. But the system made sure that recognition stayed unofficial, unrecorded, because official acknowledgement would require admitting fault. And then there is the question of the silent witnesses. Sergeant Quillen knew who she was, saw her being dismissed and underestimated every day. He did not speak up until after Granite Ridge. That is not a judgment of him. That is just the reality of how these systems work. Speaking up for someone the system has marked as unwanted can mark you too. So people stay quiet, they bear witness silently, they remember, but they do not intervene. What this story asks us to consider is whether quiet respect is enough, whether remembering is the same as defending, whether bearing witness to injustice without challenging it makes us complicit. These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary ones. A lot of people watching this have lived some version of this story, maybe not with 92 attackers and a forward operating base, but the core experience is universal. Being underestimated, being dismissed, being punished for doing the right thing in the wrong way. Having your competence ignored because acknowledging it would be inconvenient for people in power. You do not need a military uniform to understand what it feels like to be the person everyone overlooks. To be good at your job and have no one notice. To watch less qualified people get promoted while you stay invisible. To know that you could handle more responsibility but no one will give you the chance to prove it. And you definitely do not need combat experience to understand what it means to make a choice between standing up and staying quiet, between doing what is right and doing what is safe, between protecting yourself and protecting others. Those choices happen in offices, in classrooms, in families, in communities, every single day. What makes Reeves' story powerful is not that it is extraordinary. It is that the core of it is so ordinary, the feeling of being left behind, the decision to do your job anyway, the quiet competence that no one acknowledges, the strength it takes to keep showing up when showing up costs you everything. That is not a military story. That is a human story, and I think that is why it resonates. So I am curious about something. If you were in Reeves' position in that hospital room, when they offered you everything you had lost, would you have said no? Would you have refused the rank and the recognition and the apology, or would you have taken it? Because I am honestly not sure what I would do. Part of me thinks I would want the vindication, the public acknowledgement that I was right and they were wrong. But another part of me wonders if accepting their offer would feel like letting them off the hook, like allowing them to control the narrative one more time. And here is the other question I keep sitting with. What moment in this story stayed with you the most? Was it the combat, the confrontation with command, that quiet moment when she handed her notebook to Bryn, the decision to return to obscurity? I would genuinely like to know what landed for you. What made you stop and think? Because stories like this mean different things to different people based on what we have lived through. And sometimes the comments section becomes its own kind of witness, its own kind of remembering. If this story made you think, made you feel something, I appreciate you being here for it. These kinds of stories matter, not because they are comfortable, but because they are true in ways that matter.